Welcome, everybody. My name is Richard Barrett, and I'm going to be talking to you today about reconnecting to the values of humanity. So let's get started right away. I want to first of all tell you or answer the question, who am I? I am the president of the Barrett Academy, and the purpose of the Barrett Academy is to discover, incubate, and develop ideas and concepts that support the evolution of human consciousness. And in particular, one of the things we've been incubating is the Humanity Awareness Initiative. And the purpose of the Humanity Awareness Initiative is to accelerate the evolution of human consciousness by creating education and training programs that lead to the emergence of a new, more holistic worldview. Well, since humans have been on the planet, there have been 6 worldviews. Each worldview focused on specific values and beliefs linked to the dominant stage of psychological development of the people. So we started off 200,000 years ago and right up till about 15,000 years ago living in clan awareness, small family groups of a nomadic nature, surviving as best they could. And then we moved into tribe awareness. We started settling, particularly in the area of the world called the Levant, and we started farming and we began to develop tribe awareness. So this was about 10,000 years ago. What happened then was quite interesting because the whole of the Sahara Desert and Saudi Arabia, etc., were very fertile in those days, and people lived in tribes there. And as the glaciers retracted further north, these areas became deserts, and the people from these areas moved into the fertile valleys, which were already occupied, and we started to get into wars between tribes, and we developed a new worldview, which is called state awareness, which is really security through power and strength. Whereas tribe awareness was safety through belonging and loyalty, state awareness focused on power, because you had to be strong to defeat your neighbors. And this led to the building of global empires. Alexander the Great is one example, Egyptian times, also the Romans and the Greeks built empires. And this was known as state awareness. That went on until around just over 1500 years ago, when we began to see nation awareness. It was very chaotic in state awareness. And in nation awareness, the interesting thing was that the cosmology became monotheistic religions, and it brought order to the system. So now we were looking for security through authority in education, whereas before it was all about power. And if we go back all the way to clan awareness, the cosmology there was nature spirits, and the cosmology in tribe awareness was more ancestor worship. And in state awareness, it was multiple gods. In nation awareness, we went into monotheistic religions. But from there, around 17th, 16th century, we began to move into wealth awareness, where the power of the monarchy and authority and religion began to take a dip. And we started to focus on security through status and influence, and we call that wealth awareness. Then around 150, 200 years ago, we started to move into people awareness. So this is where the elites began to lose power and people began to find freedom. And this is freedom through equality and accountability. And now what's happening is we're developing a new worldview. I call it humanity awareness. And the most important thing about humanity awareness is that it is transnational. And the survival of our species really depends on the adoption of this transnational worldview. in nation awareness and wealth awareness, and even in people awareness, we were focused on countries. We identified with our countries. But if we keep on going identifying with countries, we'll never solve the problems of humanity. We need to have a transnational identity. And that's why humanity awareness is so important. Which worldview do you identify with? Interesting. There are more and more people beginning to identify with the worldview of humanity awareness, but there are no nations which have fully expressed this worldview. Most of the Nordic nations, plus New Zealand and Switzerland, are focused on what we call people awareness. And then there's a number of countries in Northern Europe which are focused on wealth awareness, such as Germany, UK, Austria, etc. And then as we go a little further down, we get to nation awareness. Now, the United States, for example, used to be in wealth awareness, but in recent times, it's moved down to nation awareness. So what is a worldview? So, and how a worldview form? Well, a worldview has three belief systems: a cosmological belief system that links to the religion or whatever. I spoke earlier of nature spirits, worship of ancestors, monotheistic religions, etc. These are all cosmological belief systems. And so that's an important belief system which forms part of a worldview. And then there's personal values and beliefs. And we have also cultural values and beliefs. And each one of these actually operates on a different time scale. So on a day-to-day basis, when we react and respond to what's happening in our lives, we use our personal values and beliefs. And when over our lifetime, we live in a particular culture, well, we learn to live through the cultural beliefs. But the cosmological beliefs actually are, transcend our lifetime. They actually also regard to what is it that we find, how do we regard the divine creator provider, and what happens to our life after death. So there are like three different time periods in these different belief systems, but together they form a worldview. Now, what are the dominant belief systems? I've been indicating this a little earlier, but whereas all of these belief systems operate in a worldview, one of these belief systems tends to be dominant, so that in the clan awareness with nature spirits, that was the cosmological worldview was very, very important. And in tribe awareness, it became much more cultural. The worldview of culture, the belief structures of culture became important in tribes to preserve the integrity of the tribe and also to provide safety for the people. Now, something very interesting happened, and we moved into state awareness because it now became the personal belief system. What happened really was we had an explosion of the male ego and power. And then in nation awareness, we had, whereas it was security through power in state awareness, it was security through authority in nation awareness with monarchs and religious figures. And then in wealth awareness, again, it was security through wealth and influence. And then as we moved into people awareness, it became, the cultural worldview became important again. And as we move into humanity awareness, we're going to find the cosmological belief structure becoming dominant. They'll all be there, but I'm talking here about what is the dominant belief system. Now, the dominant beliefs, or the different worldviews, actually relate to the stages of psychological development. And what we've been seeing as we've moved through these different worldviews is a shift from surviving, conforming, and differentiating. This is what we call the Barrett model. And these are the deficiency, Maslow called these deficiency needs. And once we got through those, we then got into the individuating stage, which is about freedom. And now, as we move forward, we move into the growth needs. And this is how we see that. So each stage of personal development leads to a stage of societal development. And what we now need to do is to promote self-actualization. And that is the whole idea of humanity awareness, is to lift the human species to a new level of awareness. Now, we still have on the planet, in remote parts of Brazil, for example, or Amazon rainforest and other parts of the world, people living in clan awareness. And in Africa and in North America and other regions, we have people living in tribe awareness. And then we have quite a lot of nations living in state and wealth and nation awareness. But we've only got a handful of nations living in people awareness. And some of those nations are beginning to adopt policies that align with humanity awareness. So what's the important point here is that personal development precedes societal development. Now, that's fundamentally important to understanding how our world is going to evolve. And the whole idea of humanity awareness is to promote this evolution. So each worldview is triggered by various events. So clan awareness emerged with Homo sapiens, where tribe awareness began to come about when we started doing agriculture. State awareness began when climate change happened in the Sahara and Asia, and it began to we build these powerful groups which were very much focused on empire building. And then we moved into nation awareness, and that really was about bringing more order to the chaos of state awareness by adopting a monotheistic religion. And so nations in nation awareness have a strong religious side, but they also are quite well, so these nations are quite well advanced. And then wealth awareness. So secularism came in, and we began to have a new cosmology, which is science. And in science, there is no God. There's just random mutations. And whereas in nation awareness, we had an external God, and in wealth awareness, we had no God. And in people awareness, we moved into spirituality, where the God went inside, in other words. But also what precipitated people awareness was things like voting rights for women. And then as we move into humanity awareness, COVID is an interesting trigger for that. And the climate crisis is even more important too, because we can't solve the problems from the national level. We have to move into the worldview of humanity awareness. Now let's take a look at all of these different worldviews. In clan awareness, it was survival through sharing and reciprocity. Governance was participated based on rules and rituals and traditions, and it was all about survival. Cosmology was nature spirits, leadership was situational, and gender roles were really defined by the needs of the clan and the needs of nature. So the focus here is on the needs of the clan, and the dominant belief is cosmological. Now we move into tribe awareness, and here we see it's safety through belonging and loyalty. That's how we stay safe, is being true and loyal to the tribe. So the council of elders, but what is interesting is there's ethnic discrimination. So if you're in one tribe, you're definitely not in another tribe. And so that is one of the interesting things about tribe awareness. In the cosmology, it's again the spirit world, but it's more about ancestors and magic potions and evil spirits as quite dominant. The leadership is a chief or a big man, and a status through wealth and possessions, and gender roles are defined again by the needs of the tribe, as it was in clan awareness. And this area, cultural beliefs are dominant. Now we move to state awareness, and this is all about power, security through power and strength. And we see that governance is very authoritarian. We have to control the people. There's ideological discrimination. So the former USSR, North Korea, all of these are examples of state awareness. There are many nations actually in the world operating from state awareness. There are various cosmologies, sometimes a single god, sometimes a pantheon of gods. And leadership is very repressive. No trust, secret police, lack of freedom. This is what's going on in Afghanistan right now. Women have absolutely no rights, and they're treated as personal property. and focus on the needs of the leader. Basically, it's all about how is the leader finding self-esteem through power and strength. And then we move to nation awareness. This is security through authority and education. And so if you could get an education, or if you were born into an important family, you could be part of the governance system. But these are flawed democracies. Either not everybody gets to vote, or the voting system isn't truly democratic. Recently, USA moved into, became a flawed democracy, and there are many other flawed democracies in the world. And cosmology tends to be monotheistic, Christian, Islam. Moral conduct is very important in this in nation awareness. The leader may be elected, but manipulates to stay in power. They're still quite influenced by state awareness. And in the monarchies, there was this idea of the divine right to rule. Women are, instead of being property, are really now second-class citizens and very much controlled by men. So here the focus is on the needs of the monarch, the landowners, and the elites. And now we move to wealth awareness. And this is really security through status and influence, and most importantly, through money. That's how we get our security. And we see that the governance is separation of religion and state. And now we move into full democracies, usually with two-party systems. But there's a lot of wealth discrimination going on within the nation. Cosmology is basically science, no God. Religion is pretty much a private matter. Leadership is by status and influence, and the wealthy influence the political elites through bribery and corruption. Women still don't have full equality. They can't get past the glass ceiling, but now they're regarded more as sexual objects. So this is really the focus on needs of business and the wealthy elites. Then we move into people awareness, and this is a picture that the Nordic people will recognize, particularly if in Sweden. That's a picture of the summer festival. So this is freedom through equality and accountability, liberal democracy. And here we see a shift from two-party systems to coalition governments and consensus building. Cosmology is basically spirituality, and there's no or very little discrimination within this people awareness worldview. Decision-making in leadership is values-based. There's a lot of focus on being politically correct, and there are many more female leaders. For example, amongst the Nordic nations, most of the leaders in the Nordic nations are actually elected leaders are women. Full equality and no discrimination. So here is the focus is on the social welfare and freedom of all citizens. What this means is that people's deficiency needs have now been met, because through the tax system, everybody gets looked after by the state. Now we move to humanity awareness, the newly emergent worldview. And this, now we shift from that individuating stage of development to self-expression through the exploration of creativity. So this is where we all find meaning and purpose, and it's about psychological well-being. So here we've got direct representation from different age groups. So there are no ideological political parties in this system. The people rule, and every age group is represented. The cosmology is now moved from spirituality into soul awareness, and leadership is transnational and global, and many female role models. Full equality and focus on basic needs, and not just the social needs, but also the psychological needs of the people. So now mental health takes a high priority in humanity awareness. So what differentiates all of these is, as each level of consciousness of a group of people expands, their worldview increases and the governance system changes to reflect that new worldview. And the new worldview becomes more inclusive of people. That's the most important point about these worldviews. As worldviews expand, the worldview becomes more inclusive. So I would say now, operating from humanity awareness, I'm a citizen of the planet. I'm not a citizen of the United Kingdom. Now, where can you learn about humanity awareness? Well, you go to the humanityawarenessinitiative.org. The website has been up for a few months, but we've just created this community learning platform. And if you click on this button, you can actually find 11 courses that explain how to live in humanity awareness. And so this is a really, I'm very excited about this. I don't know quite how to describe it, but it's the start of a new worldview. This is not a 2-year project. It's not a 5-year project. It's more like a 50 or 100-year project to create a new worldview, but we have to start somewhere. So what is the central idea in humanity awareness? Well, to promote the psychological development of the human species by supporting full human self-expression. So we're moving up from individuating, which was what happened in the Nordic nations through the Bildung program, into self-actualization. And how are we going to do it? We're going to deliver it through education and training programs designed to accelerate the evolution of human consciousness. That's exactly what happened in the Nordic nations starting in 1850. That's why they're always at the top right-hand corner of any values diagram, because they focused on training programs for the people in the country, not just in Denmark and Sweden and Norway, but also in Finland and Iceland. And that is what has really, I think, been the success of the Nordic nations, is they've had this inner curriculum for the people to help them to expand their consciousness. So if you go to the Humanity Awareness website, you can find all of these handbooks. There's a handbook about how to live humanity awareness as a parent, as a school teacher, as a teenager, young adult, etc., etc., etc. And you can download these handbooks. So I've already mentioned cosmology several times, and so humanity awareness has its own cosmology. I call it soul awareness. It goes beyond spirituality. Now, what is important in all of these is I've made up this phrase: identity has always been the slave to survival and the demon of oppression. So that in a particular country, if you were a minority group, you could be oppressed. And however, at the same time, in order to survive, you had to become part of a group. And we need to expand to a higher order identity that includes everyone if we're going to solve the problems of humanity and the problems that are in the world right now, like the climate crisis. So we must unite to overcome the dangers that are facing humanity. So in each of these worldviews, there's a different hierarchy of people. So in clan awareness, which is all about kinship, those with special knowledge were a little bit higher in the hierarchy. If you knew how to blend herbs together to create healing, or if you were a shaman, for example, you'd be a little bit higher in the hierarchy. In tribe awareness, which is all about ethnicity, blood relations to the chief were important in terms of hierarchy. In state awareness, these are blood ties to the leader, and loyalty to the leader is rewarded. But actually, there's not much security because everybody's vying to become leader, and so people are being stabbed in the back, literally, in the Roman times. And this was happening, and that was state awareness, and it still goes on to this day. I think, not so long ago, the brother of the leader of North Korea was taken out. This is very chaotic, and when you move to nation awareness, you get a bit more stability through the idea of religion. But now we're talking about blood ties to the leader or the monarchy. That's really and landowners and social class were really quite important. And as we moved into wealth awareness, we got it moved into a hierarchy based on wealth: upper class, middle class, lower class, etc. And people awareness, well, little regard for hierarchy in people awareness, and in humanity awareness, there's absolutely no regard for hierarchy. It's competence that is important. So if you look at this very famous diagram by Engelhardt and Welser, where they look at traditional versus secular values on the y-axis and survival expression values on the x-axis, which is really levels of consciousness that I've been describing, you can see that these nations in the top right-hand corner are all operating from people awareness. You see Iceland, Denmark, Norway, Finland, etc. And then if you look a little bit further down, these are the countries operating from wealth awareness. And these are the countries operating from nation awareness. You see Catholic Europe is right there because there's a strong focus on religion. And then we've got in the rest of the, well, strong focus on state awareness, different levels of state awareness. Now, what we see is an evolution. And as democracy increases and personal growth increases, we move towards humanity awareness. Now, this is the key factor, democracy, or key factors, democracy and personal growth. So what I did was, if we just go back a slide, you can see here, I took this x-axis, I took the values of Engelhardt and Welser, but I changed the y-axis to what I call my global well-being indicators. This is a way of measuring global well-being, and there is a website just up which tells you how to do that. So if I now plot along the x-axis what I call consciousness, and up the y-axis the well-being of nations, this is very illuminating, because what we see up in this top right-hand corner, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, are all of these people awareness countries, and then the wealth awareness countries, and then the national awareness. And all of that happens between the scores 500 and 600 in global well-being indicator. So once you get up to this higher score, consciousness expands very rapidly. And what this higher score represents means that we move through these deficiency needs, and now we're looking at growth needs in Maslow's terms. All of these countries down here on the left-hand corner are flawed democracies or authoritarian regimes, whereas only these in the top right area are full democracies. And if you look at the distribution of worldviews, you can see here in green, people awareness, New Zealand and the Nordic nations and Switzerland, you can't quite see it there. And then we've got wealth awareness, which is UK and parts of Northern Europe. And then we've got nation awareness. USA went down to nation awareness just a couple of years ago, along with a lot of Europe. And then different levels of state awareness. Now, all of this can be found on a website called globalwellbeingindicators.com. So what about creating this idea of humanity awareness? Well, there are three core principles to humanity awareness: living a conscious life. We become unconscious when we begin to distinguish our own thoughts and opinions from the thoughts and opinions of everybody around us. We actually individuate, we discover who we really are. We become responsible for our lives, and we begin to make choices on our most deeply held values and motivations. Secondly, we live a values-driven life. So instead of basing all our decisions on beliefs, now we start to focus on building our lives based on our values and making decisions based on our values. There are actually 6 modes of distinction of decision-making: instincts, subconscious beliefs, and conscious beliefs. And then as we move through the individuating stage, we begin to make decisions based on values. And after values comes intuition, and then inspiration or inspiritation. And lastly, the other principle is living a purposeful life. So to find fulfillment and well-being, we must find meaning and purpose. And finding meaning and purpose, we have to align our actions and behaviors with our deepest motivations. So the HAI Core Education Program is based on 11 e-learning courses, which can be delivered in 3 formats: self-paced learning, blended learning, and face-to-face learning. And so each one of these 11 courses is an e-learning course. And if you want to go through this program in a blended learning, it takes about 8 to 9 months, because every course, it takes about 5 to 10 hours, and then you need to discuss it with other people in your cohort. And so this is the program, and it's free. And what are the audiences? Well, this program can be delivered to families of wealth. These are owners of businesses, to political leaders, to business leaders, to mature adults, young adults, teenagers, children, and preschool. Now, obviously, preschool children are not going to follow an e-learning course, but the principles should be taught in our schools. That's how we're going to create or make a rapid shift over the next 2 or 3 generations, by teaching our children these principles right from the very get-go. Now, within all of these, within the humanity awareness, there's a new leadership paradigm. I wrote about this 10 years ago, and it is absolutely applicable today. And in this leadership program, we shift from I to we, a shift in focus from becoming the best in the world to the best for the world. And business is really a wholly owned subsidiary of society, and society is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. If you need proof of that, just look at COVID-19. We couldn't handle that in our society, so businesses crashed all over the world. They went bankrupt. Now, the same thing is going to happen with the environment if we're not careful. So it behooves businesses nowadays not just to focus on being sustainable, but actively supporting the evolution of our society. So we don't want business to crash because it provides us with income. So we want to bring these ideas of humanity awareness and the principles into business. So organizations and their values and culture can play a really important part in promoting humanity awareness. First of all, by increasing the personal well-being of employees and teaching these principles to employees, and then creating programs within the organization that support the local community, and then the organization contributing towards national well-being and also towards global well-being through the adoption of the principles that I've been talking about here. So organizations can lead the way. Education is really important, but that's the long-term solution. The short-term solution is to shift the worldview in our organizations and to teach this program to the leaders and to the managers and supervisors and staff of organizations. So the vital question is, how can leaders hold the space for the diverse developmental needs of their citizens, supporters, and employees by developing government practices and policies that enable people to live fulfilling and meaningful lives? Because that's what we all want. We want to lead a fulfilling and meaningful life. And the answer is, of course, in the HAI core education program. So there are 2 parts to this. There's 3 parts. There's the overview, where you get to understand what humanity awareness is about. Then part 2 is about self-discovery. I call that the inner curriculum. There are 2 aspects of that: self-discovery and sharing your gifts and talents. And there you see the 3 principles. And then the external curriculum, understanding mental well-being, understanding societal well-being, understanding organizational well-being. So what we need to do is focus on global well-being, and through embracing the core principles of humanity awareness. And if you take this program into your organization and you run this program throughout, you can become a HAI certified organization for humanity awareness. And where do you find out more? Well, you go to the Humanity Awareness Initiative website, humanityawarenessinitiative.org. You click on this little button here, and you will find all of the information on all of the courses which you can download in order to promote humanity awareness throughout your organization. So there we have it. That's the program for connecting to the leaders, connecting to humanity. Thank you for your time. I hope you found it interesting. And I look forward to seeing you on the Humanity Awareness Initiative platform. Thank you and goodbye.